I'm Monica. I'm married to Paul and we have 3 kids, Sebastian, Joshua and Charlotte. They're aged 5 and under. We live on an acre of land just outside of Albury, and we have 5 chickens, 2 alpacas, and we are just living the idyllic country life. Like, my husband cycles 10 minutes to work, and it's amazing. We moved to Albury a few years ago, and pretty soon after, I began experiencing a pretty bad case of postnatal anxiety, and in the process of recovering from that, I became really fascinated by everything to do with the restoration of the mind. And when I found life coaching last year, a few weeks after my 3rd baby was born, it just brought together all these concepts that I'd been learning in just such a powerful way, and almost immediately I knew I had to teach this to others. So I became a Catholic life coach. I want to briefly touch on some definitions and distinctions for the following terms: Catholic versus secular life coaching, what the difference is there, counselling or therapy, spiritual direction, and mindset coaching. So putting it simply, secular life coaching makes you the agent of change rather than the Holy Spirit, which is what we do as a Catholic life coach. Therapy takes your life from non-functioning to functioning, like you're kind of drowning in your life in some way, and is often focused on the past and present, while coaching is future-focused mostly and takes your life from, let's say, good to great. So one kind of is helping you get to a place of surviving, and the other to get you to a place of thriving. Very generally speaking. Using the terms of the personalist language of today, I would say that coaching focuses on developing your interiority, your interior life, to be as fully and authentically human as possible. It's a human formation focus, and so we help clients work towards a noble material goal, or maybe an increase in acquired human virtue. Spiritual direction, on the other hand, focuses on your interiority in relation to God. There's a focus on your prayer life, so it's about your relationship with God. Finally, mindset coaching is a type of life coaching in which coaches are trained not only to help you change your actions, but to find the thoughts that are at the root of those actions, and to hold up those thoughts against the light of truth, and help a client to fully and freely decide whether they want to keep them. So we're kind of focused on trying to deal with the root and not just the symptoms. So I want to talk about 5 things that all books on spiritual life and personal development kind of have in common. Number 1, things happen in our lives that are outside of our control, and we need to accept them. So I've got a few quotes for each of these points. So from Father Jacques Philippe, we can only transform reality fruitfully if we accept it first. Again from Father Jacques Philippe, we are not always masters of the unfolding of our lives, but we can always be masters of the meaning we give them. And from 1 Thessalonians, give thanks in all circumstances. So things happen that we can't control, and we need to accept them. Number 2, your attitude matters, your thoughts matter, and some version of you need to think positively or focus on the good, true, and beautiful. From Philippians 4, finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. So your mindset matters. Number 3, you need to allow your feelings. And I liked the way that, I forget what his name is, but anyway, the guy that gave the talk, talked about shame as being a mode of self-presence. So I think that's a nice way of thinking about what emotions are. They're modes of being present to oneself. So from Father Jacques Philippe again, the most painful suffering is the suffering we reject. So when we've all had that experience of maybe like trying to stuff our emotions down like a beach ball and hold it under the water, and then it like comes back up, not in a good way. From the Catechism, we know that the passions, the emotions, are neither good nor evil. And from Ecclesiastes, there is a time for everything and a season for every affair under the heavens. A time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance. So the whole range of human emotions are an important part of the human experience. So we need to be okay with feeling all the feels. Number 4, you have to take action. You shall know them by their fruits. Our actions show us what we really believe. So from James 2, faith without works is dead. St. Augustine, pray as though everything depended on God, work as though everything depended on you. St. Vincent Pallotti, remember that the Christian life is one of action. St. Ambrose, faith means battles. If there are no contests, it is because there are none who desire to contend. So you've got to take action. You can't just sit there and do nothing. And number 5, we need a vision. We need goals, and they need to be aligned with God's vision for our lives, which ultimately we know is to become a saint, to go to heaven. But kind of along the way, we can set like sub-goals as part of that to help us get there. From Proverbs, without a vision, the people perish. Psalm 127, unless the Lord builds the house, the builders labour in vain. And St. Margaret Mary Alacoque, let us begin in earnest to work out our salvation, for no one will do it for us, since even he himself who made us without ourselves will not save us without ourselves. Now here's a really cool part. What if we could take these 5 truths about the interior life, and by integrating them with the Church's teaching on human nature, on how God made us, on an authentically Catholic anthropology, and in particular today looking at St. John Paul II's personalism and kind of its culmination in his masterwork, Theology of the Body. What if we could take all of this and put it together into one tool that helps us better understand our interiority, our interior life, and how our interior life is interacting with the exterior world, and how all of that is producing the actions and results we're seeing in our lives. A tool that helps us to become students of our interior life so that we can steward it better, be like good stewards of the garden in our soul, so that God can walk there with us and we can return to something of that original harmony that Adam and Eve experienced with God. So as you might be able to guess, the good news is such a tool exists, and it's called The Model, and was created by a woman called Brooke Castillo, who is a secular life coach. But Matt and Erin Ingold from Metanoia Catholic, they kind of looked at this tool and they went, hey, this like matches really well with Aquinas's philosophy of human psychology. That's really cool. And they just took it and like ran with it. And they've done all kinds of amazing things with it. So I'm going to teach it to you now. So those 5 truths that I said to you are summarised by these 5 words. So we have circumstances, thoughts, feelings. I'll move in a second, people over there. Actions and results. And I guess in terms of the language of today, I would say that the objectivity comes in with circumstances, actions and results. These are kind of the things that are external to you. Actions is a bit interesting because there's an internal element as well, but really that's summarised by the thoughts and feelings part. So that's your interiority. Any questions so far? So the key, in my opinion, is realising how thoughts and feelings interact. This blew my mind when I heard this. So this is where theology of the body comes in. Just as we are embodied souls, incarnate souls, our thoughts become incarnate in our feelings. Our thoughts create our feelings. You might say our feelings are how we physically experience our thoughts in our body. Our feelings are incarnated thoughts. We feel our thoughts and we think our feelings into existence. So here's what that means for these 5 things and how they flow and interact. So some external circumstance happens, that triggers a thought. We have a thought about that circumstance. We interpret it in some way. The thought creates the feeling. And what we normally think is that the circumstance created our feeling, especially when someone does something mean to us. We're like, you made me feel so hurt. What we don't realise is that we chose a thought in between the two. So this is kind of slowing down what's happening interiorly. Our feelings, our emotions drive our actions. They're supposed to be the fuel for the things that we do. And then our actions create the results that we have in our life. And those results are going to be either leading us towards or away from heaven. So let me give you a quick example. Right now, I'm reminding myself that all of your eyes looking at me is a neutral circumstance. Does not feel neutral. My natural inclination is to find it very intimidating. But instead, I'm choosing to remember that every pair of eyes represents a person who is deeply loved by God and who's been called here today specifically, and there is something that He wants each of you to receive in this talk, no matter how imperfectly I give it. So, whatever my thoughts are that I have about the fact that there are all these eyes looking at me could either lead to feeling intimidated or feeling peace or conviction, which is what those latter thoughts give. But you can probably imagine feeling intimidated is probably not going to lead to giving the best talk. Whereas feeling peace and conviction is probably going to help me show up better. And it's not to say that I'm eliminated the intimidation completely, but I'm actively choosing not to give it all the airtime. So, let me say this again in a different way. No matter what happens, amongst all the things we can't control, we can choose what we think, which is where the dance between our intellect and our free will happens. And then we experience that thought physically as a feeling, which drives the actions we take in the world. And the words of our thoughts end up being incarnated in the world. The words of our thoughts are made flesh. Yeah. This is one of the ways that we're made in God's image. It's not just that we have an intellect and a will and therefore are able to love and choose. The angels have that as well. But because we're material as well, we can use those powers, those faculties of our soul to create, and in fact, to co-create with God. This is why our thoughts are so powerful, why the truth sets us free, and why our formation is so important, why regularly examining what thoughts we're allowing and whether there are any lies going on up there is so important. And that's what I help people do as a Catholic mindset coach, helping people to take every thought captive and submit it to Christ, and thereby be transformed by the renewing of their mind, no matter how insignificant those thoughts might seem at first glance, because sometimes those can be the most insidious, because we think, oh no, that's harmless, or it just seems... There are just so many thoughts that we have that we think are circumstances. We think they're factual. We think they're true. But then when you dig into it a little bit more, you start to tease out the difference between the objective factual circumstances that an outside observer would be able to agree with you on, and the interpretation that you're making of those circumstances.